Full of frustration. Full of despair. Two British football fans have had enough. The MLS UK Show.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the MLS UK Show. I'm Henry Hewitt, and as always I'm joined by...
Elliot Holman.
Elliot, I think first of all we should start by saying to our North American viewers and listeners, if you're in Canada, I hope you had a lovely Canada Day on Tuesday the 1st, I think it was. And of course, if you're in the States, happy 4th of July for Friday. Yes, we're recording this on Wednesday the 2nd. I presume that's right. But Elliot, you had also had your birthday recently. Did you have a good time?
I did have a good time. Do you know why? Because I didn't do anything. My birthday fell on a Saturday and I actually did nothing. My niece was born on the same day last year, which I'm fuming about. So, I went to a Messi play birthday party, which wasn't even mine. They brought out a cake. It wasn't even for me. And I got in bed early and had a Chinese. So,
I think you're winning that one, to be honest. Well, obviously we're in this period in between your birthday and, of course, Albert Rusnak's on Monday. So happy birthday
and yours.
To him and mine. Yeah, I'm just a bit older than Albert Rusnak. I'm still within MLS range to play. A year younger than Olivier Giroud, who I guess let's start with Olivier Giroud. We're going to talk about the Club World Cup as well to start this podcast, but. Giroud has left MLS. He's come in. He's played 25 games and scored 3 goals. And he's going back to France. When we eventually do the top 10 DPs in MLS history, I don't think Olivier Giroud is going to make the top 10.
No. Weird, isn't it? What a strange situation. Just did not work. Kind of felt like he was a good fit at LAFC. I think... Do you know what? Really underrated. Giroud's really underrated. If you forget his MLS tenure, he's a really underrated player. Got loads in his locker, loads of different skills and abilities, and I expected him to be a massive asset for LAFC. He wasn't. I completely understand why both parties have called time on that. And not to throw too much shade at the French league, but I think it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
I'm saying nothing. But yeah, it is a shame. I think through what we saw, especially in England with Arsenal and Chelsea, we expected a lot from him, and it just hasn't worked out, has it? So yeah, he goes back to the easier Farmers League. There you go, I've said it, of French football. But he leaves behind an LAFC team who went out in the group stages of the Club World Cup. So did Seattle. Inter Miami got to the round of 16 and then lost 4-0 to PSG. It was 4-0 at half-time, and I'll be honest with you, Elliot, I was a bit worried for the credibility of MLS at that point, but it did end 4-0, so at least it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think, it depends. Every team has a different priority. We said multiple times, Miami just need to win something. So, whatever that is. LAFC, they're 3 games off San Diego, and even if they win all of them, they're not going to go top. So they got work to do. I would suggest that it's time that they crack on, they focus on MLS, they play their games in hand and pick up some vital points, because they're in that last playoff spot now, which is mad. A bit of a drop off, and it's not always good having those games in hand. You'd rather have the points. Yeah,
that's true. Miami have got a lot of games in hand as well. I think Seattle have sort of managed things a bit better. They obviously won at the weekend against Austin, so I think that was important. I think whereas LAFC lost, I think it's really important for the teams, and I guess we'll see what Miami do in their next game, but for just to return from the Club World Cup and get a win, straight back to it. MLS, our thought processes with this now ahead of those teams playing in the League's Cup. So yeah, LAFC losing to Vancouver, they'll be disappointed with that. We'll see what happens with Miami, because what surprised me, I watched the wrap-up show on Apple TV, and it showed the top 10 in the Supporters Shield rankings. Of course, Inter Miami aren't there. I was looking, I was going, oh, that's strange. Where's Miami's badge? And then I had to actually look at the table and obviously, remembered that Miami are, whatever they are, sixth in the East. Because I'd thought Apple TV got it wrong, but no, they but I think all three of those teams, probably most Miami and LAFC with expectations. I think Seattle are probably whereabouts, so maybe they should be a bit higher, but whereabouts in the West we'd expect. So it'd be really interesting to see how they do push on. So let's go to MLS then, and we were talking before the show, and I picked out two teams that I really want to focus on and really want to big up. We've talked about these two teams on previous episodes, but looking at their recent form, in the East we've got Nashville, in the West we've got San Diego. What a season these two teams are having. Let's start with San Diego. They beat Dallas at the weekend 3-2. Last minute goal to win the game. Before that, they beat Vancouver 5-3, which was an incredible result. It just keeps on going, doesn't it?
Yeah, earlier, as well, like in the past 4 weeks, 2 wins, rising to the top of the Western Conference. Historic performances from some big players. Chucky and Angel. I think really San Diego emulating that St. Louis season where they just arrived on site and tore things up, and no one really knows how to handle them. It's fantastic. Drea integral in their last couple of wins, scored against Vancouver, set up multiple goals against Vancouver and Dallas. MLS team of the match day, Lozano, late equalizer against Dallas. 6 in total this season. Really, really impressive. So big standouts all over the field, and momentum-wise, top of the power rankings for MLS San Diego, and sitting pretty at the top.
They are, yeah, and even like you said there, the individual players. You're looking at Andreas Drea, who scored. He's got 8 goal involvements in 4 games, and San Diego have scored 14 in 4 games. It's just incredible, some of these results they're getting. They've won 4 in a row away from home as well. It's just the stats that you're throwing at them, they've been so impressive. And yeah, it just keeps on going. And even, players they're bringing off the bench. Obviously, Thomas Angel got his goal at the weekend, which is 2 in 2 for him. But it seems that strikers they're bringing off the bench are all scoring goals as well. Everyone's contributing to the cause. And, you mentioned there St. Louis. We've seen it before with LAFC. These teams who come into the league and have performances like this and seasons like this, unfortunately, it does tend to peter out in the playoffs, doesn't it? Let's hope it doesn't with San Diego, because what a story it would be if they could go and win it. Yeah,
and they've got Houston next up. I wouldn't say struggling, but, sitting around 10th place, where we kind of almost used to seeing Houston. And you feel like that's an opportunity to get a big 3 points and potentially start to pull a lead on Vancouver, because they beat them fair and square. So we thought Vancouver were the team to watch. San Diego, all eyes are on them now.
Yeah, well, Vancouver, we looked on the last episode, didn't we, and said that they've got that San Diego game and then 5 straight away games. I'm glad for their sake that they've won the first one, because if they lose against San Diego at home and then start losing these away games, they could peter away Vancouver. But hopefully we've got a battle on our hands there in the West. Let's go over to Nashville then, because their stats are as good as San Diego's. I mean, Sam Surridge, what a season he's had. He's scored 6 games in a row, 10 in 6, and he got a hat-trick in the week. This guy is just... I feel he's been a slow burner in MLS since he joined the league, coming over from England. But now this season, he's really showing what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, leading the league. We talked about him very early this season, and I said, this guy is a joy to watch. I think it was the Philadelphia game early on that I watched him play in, and I said, I just love always looking to get a shot off, always looking to be a little bit of a nuisance. And he's not just being a nuisance off the ball, and strength-wise, he's been a nuisance in front of goal and to goalkeepers as well. Leading the league, absolutely fantastic, complete standout, and it's no disrespect to MLS when I say he should be playing at the highest level, because MLS I've started to really place MLS ahead of a lot of leagues in the world. The standard has really, really grown, especially, what we've been watching over the last 8 years. The growth is off the scale, but Sam Surridge should be 100% playing for a big team. Big teams need to be looking at this guy.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more about it later on, but the summer transfer window in MLS is opening very soon, so let's see what happens with that. Even though Nashville are unbeaten in 13, I was having a look at some of the results at the weekend, and we shouldn't have been too... they were away at DC, so obviously they were going to win that because DC have been very, well, I say up and down, mostly down this season. But I was having a look at the teams who didn't play in the week because, in case you didn't notice, there were matches in the week and some teams didn't play, some teams did. Now, the teams who all played twice seem to have done better than the teams who were playing for the first time in about two weeks, 10 days. I'll run through some of these results. So Toronto 3, Portland 0. Portland didn't play in the week, so they've had a 2-week gap. Montreal 1, NYC 0. NYC didn't play. DC didn't play, lost 1-0 to Nashville. The only team to get a result, because Seattle beat Austin, who also didn't play. SKC 1, RSL 1. So RSL's draw at SKC, the only team who didn't play in the week, and I'm not including the teams in the Club World Cup because obviously they were playing. But MLS games, the teams that didn't play who could have done, all lost apart from RSL, which I thought was very interesting considering they'd had an extra bit of a break.
So you need momentum, but not too much. You need momentum, but then play too many games and you got Pep's on the blower kicking off. He's unhappy. So it's a fine line, isn't it? And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, the more we think about it. Also, travel in MLS obviously is a huge factor, probably more than in any other league. So that is also always really interesting to see who's played on Wednesday or Thursday and then's got a big trip at the weekend. There's a couple of back-to-back games for teams who struggled a little bit. But yeah, momentum, massive factor.
Yeah, and also 4-hour matches that do happen in MLS. And I noticed Chelsea's head coach found that out the hard way in the Club World Cup and wasn't happy. We had another one at the weekend, didn't we? Columbus 1, Philadelphia 0. Didn't end at the advertised time, but it was a hell of a game. Philadelphia really would probably feel they should have got something out of this, but they lost. Columbus 1, Philly 0. 3 straight wins for Columbus, which they'd kind of needed, didn't they? Because they dropped off a little bit. They're still in 4th, but Philadelphia, this was their first defeat since the 13th of April. They're still at the top of the Supporters' Shield standings, but I'm not going to say they're starting to falter because they're not. I mean, this was a one-off. But Columbus, big win, isn't it, to get them back at momentum?
Yeah, stopped an 11-match run for Philly. And to be honest with you, one of my favourite players in MLS, Farsi, who I just think is really underrated. And I talk about a lot on the podcast. I certainly have in the last couple of years. Really, really rate him. Love the way that Columbus play so that they can get those wing backs forward. And it was wing back to wing back, wasn't it? That goal. And I think the way that Columbus play is really, really wonderful. Like there's such a great team to watch. Possession based. They've lost goal scorers from their team, and so but they don't panic. They're like, well, that's fine. We've still got the ball. We keep the ball. We work the space, and eventually they know they're patient and they know their chance will come. And I actually started to watch this game on Sunday night, and then I needed to pop out. I had to go and give someone a lift. So I was like, oh, that's annoying. I'm going to miss it. But no, I managed to get out. I was out for over an hour, come back, and I was like, oh, I wonder how that game finished. Wait, it's still half time. How's that happened?
You should know by now, Elliot, that we can never trust advertised times in MLS.
I know, ridiculous.
Right, well, let's move on. I want to talk about Charlotte for a moment. They was at Chicago at the weekend, went 3-0 down. Chicago almost did a Colorado and let it slip, but Charlotte only scored the 2 goals, so Chicago won in the end. But I want to talk about Wilfried Zaha because he's doing okay. You know, he is contributing. However, the Wilfried Zaha that we know and love, that we saw at Crystal Palace for so many years, someone who can throw his toys out of the pram, out of the cot, out of the crib, whatever you want to call it in North America. But there's some of the defending from Charlotte and some of the decisions that their team is making. He must be so frustrated at the moment.
Yeah, but I think we've been able to say this for years about certain players when teams that aren't particularly strong have had DPs that have come in and they're sort of looking around going, guys, come on, I can't do this all myself. I think, he's right to maybe feel a little bit frustrated. 18 starts, 5 goals, 5 assists. Getting his shots away, 19 out of 35 on target, is actually really impressive. So, it's nearly 80% shot accuracy, but you just still want more. You want that electricity that he can bring. It's not necessarily about shots on target. You expect that. He's a good, strong player in MLS. He's going to get shots away. But we're looking for more from Zaha. You're looking for that electricity, that spark, that feeling that when he gets the ball, something's going to happen. You'll get this. I grew up watching Darren Huckabee for Norwich. Is he the best winger in the world? No, but whenever he got the ball, you knew he was going to try. He never, ever turned back. He never turned back and passed backwards. Everyone was up because you knew he was going to try something. And I feel stupid because you got to watch JJ Okocha at the same time, and that's a very different level. But that's what they need from him. That's what they'd be looking for.
Yeah, Darren Huckabee, of course, was when we used to do the game with the changing name. Was a part of that, so MLS fans know who
San Jose Earthquakes legend.
Yeah, well, something that wouldn't have impressed Wilfried Zaha is Chicago tweeting out that he was in Jonathan Dean's pocket after the game, which is some of the MLS social media banter that we've grown to love, and we defend on this podcast actually when. Well, people like David Beckham, or Sir David Beckham, as I should now say, don't like it. Right, well, let's move on. Is there any other teams who have impressed you or not impressed you in MLS recently?
To be honest with you, I wanted to talk about Columbus, so I'm glad we've covered that off. Obviously, we haven't had a huge amount of games since we last spoke, so for me, it was Columbus, it was San Diego, and it was Nashville who. All three of those teams looking really impressive. A word to Vancouver, it's testament to how much they've grown, I think, and how much better they've got. That they lose to San Diego, they drop down to second, and everyone's like, oh dear. Vancouver in second place in the West is still really, really impressive.
It is, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, one thing I wanted to quickly mention, and it's saying how impressed they've been actually with Emil Forsberg and Choupo-Moting, how they've played with each other. We talked about the signing of Choupo-Moting at the start of the season, because obviously Red Bulls, they got to MLS Cup. How do they push on from there? And we were kind of saying with Choupo-Moting, good player, is he going to do it in MLS? And, he's proving that he has done it. And, a great assist for Forsberg at the weekend. I mean, it was mostly Choupo-Moting who did the work. Forsberg just ran in the end and got the goal. But no, I've been impressed with them. And Red Bulls 7th in the East, they kind of, for me, in a similar situation as they were last year. They kind of there or thereabouts. And it wouldn't surprise me, with those two up front, that if it got to playoffs and they were in it, if the results went their way and a few of the big hitters went out, it wouldn't surprise me if they could get to MLS Cup again.
No, they've done all their damage at home as well. Chicago Fire have won 6 away games. New York Red Bulls have won 1. And Chicago sit below them in the table, which is crazy. So New York occupying that last playoff spot. And much similar to last season. They'll be happy with that as long as they clinch that. But I think, what you're saying is they actually, they've got potential to kick on. But the problem for me is you look at the teams above them. So New York performing well. Choupo-Moting, one of the most random signings of the off season, but working really well with Forsberg. But Miami are above them, and they've got games in hand. They're going to be up there. They've got Messi. Breaking news. Don't know if you're aware. Orlando City look really strong. Columbus are playing beautiful football. Nashville, we've talked about, they're on fire. Then Cincy and Philly, up top, 40 points and 39. I think the problem is with New York is, they're doing well, but are they at those levels? Maybe they're at Orlando level. Maybe that's fair. Maybe they could overtake Orlando, but I don't see them above a Columbus, Nashville, Cincy, Philly. I think they need more to get to that next level, and they certainly need to be winning some away games. That's for sure. I mean, we're comparing them to Orlando. Orlando won four games on the road and still managed to win 5 at home. So there's still a little bit of a distance between those two sides for me. And I think Miami are naturally going to jump a lot of those sides.
Well, you've just set off the Messi klaxon there, so let's move on. Let's move on then and talk about Leo Messi, because he is reportedly in talks to sign a new deal at Inter Miami. So he's got 6 months left. He's got running to the end of MLS season. Now with the World Cup coming up in the summer, I'm sure the people in charge at MLS and the US, federation would love to have Leo Messi playing in the States at that time. He looked very despondent at the end, at half time of that game against PSG in the Club World Cup. Can you see him signing a new contract, or do you think he's ready to move on?
I can is a short answer, because he's got a great setup there. I think he's much more settled than he was at PSG. I think that was a panic move, and I think they've made him feel at home in Miami, and MLS, Adidas, Messi, they've built a brand there, and you're seeing these Messi shirts all over the world. It's working for all parties. For me though, it's just simply, I think we all know he's gonna go home and he's gonna want to go and retire in Rosario, and it's when is he gonna do that, and how much of his legs does he want to still have when he goes to do that? Is it just going to be to sit on the bench and have a run out, or is it going to be next season when he can be effective? So I don't think Miami take it too personally if he doesn't stay. I think this is 50-50. I think this is completely 50-50, and I don't think it's a reflection on MLS or a reflection on Miami. If they'd have won MLS Cup, maybe he'd have gone sooner. I just think this is just a case of his age, his physicality, and how much he wants to be able to give to his original club back where he's from. If it's just going to be to sit on the bench, he can stay in MLS for a little bit.
I'm going to go with 70-30 that he signs, but I think it'd be a 1-year deal. I think Inter Miami are desperate. They have to win MLS Cup with Leo Messi, or the Champions League Champions Cup with Leo Messi. They have to win a massive trophy with Leo Messi here, or else it can be looked at as maybe a failure. I know they've won Supporter Shield, but they need to go that step further. So I agree with you. I think Messi retires back at, in his home country. However, I don't think Miami want to see him leave now. I think they agree a 1-year deal, see what they can do this year, then he's here for the World Cup, then plays for a few months after that, and then goes. That's my prediction anyway.
I think 1-year deal is fair. And if he leaves in a year's time or 2 years' time or 2 months' time, and he hasn't won MLS Cup, if you're Miami, where do you go after that? Like, we couldn't win it with Messi, so what do we even do now? Do we move for Yamal at this point? Do we just try, what do we do? How do you win MLS Cup if you can't do it with Messi? I'm not laughing. I'm being serious. Like, that's massive. What were the odds that he would come to Miami and not win MLS Cup? Because that's wild.
I know, but I think they go down the same route as PSG with the Champions League. I think they then just go, right, we just get a load of youngsters and get them really well coached and win it from there. Because, you've got the best player ever. The best player, still one of the best players in the world right now. And you've got his friends with him. And you've even got his friend as a head coach, and you're still not done it. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We'll have to see what happens after the summer. Obviously, Miami, I think it's, maybe not safe to say they've got games in hand, but I don't think they'll win Supporters' Shield this year. So, let's see what they can do in the playoffs, see if they can get over the line this time. Right, well, before we go, let's just quickly we've got 3 weeks left until the summer window. Obviously, this is happening around the time that the League's Cup is on, so there's some teams who will have their attention elsewhere. But looking at the league as it is, without going, obviously we can't go into too much detail, looking at maybe the standings, which teams need to make some big moves in the summer?
Well, Atlanta made big moves in the summer, and I think they've proved that isn't always the way. Atlanta are 14th in the East with only Montreal below them. I mean, I haven't even mentioned it because it's borderline sad rather than funny. Like, what's even going on? They don't have games in hand. They do on Montreal, but yeah, I think there's a real point there. You know, they spent big money on 2 really, really big, important pieces. It hasn't worked. It just hasn't. It's just a fact at this point. It has not worked. Guzan has to go. I don't understand just saying the same thing every single episode. What are they doing? Get a goalkeeper in. There's no room for sentiment. You're basically bottom of the league. He has to go. And you have to get some real leaders in place on the field, and they have to be able to push this team forward, because the playoffs are slipping. They're 11 points off. So there is an argument that do you even spend big, or do you just try to pick up as many pieces as possible? I think DC, for me, when you've got Benteke, who's as good as Benteke is, and he has been good, he massively needs help. He needs some support. So I think DC always seem to have a small roster, just always have done. You just think they need more. And again, you're looking at the teams. You know, Galaxy, it's gone. Unfortunately, it's over. I know they managed to get a win. But it's over. So you're looking at Dallas, you're looking at Kansas, you're looking at RSL, who have, had a poor season, to try to rescue. So it's going to be, for me, it's going to be those teams that are, have got fine margins, that are just looking for that extra little bit of edge, little bit of bite.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, yeah, it's easy for me to say Atlanta, but I agree with you. And it's the same with Galaxy. And, what difference can they make at the moment? Atlanta moved big in the close season, so listen, I've not looked at the DP list before this. I've not looked at budgets and whatever, and but Atlanta would have almost maxed out. They went big in the close season, so where do you go from here? Galaxy could make moves, but again, what's the point? Unless you're bringing in someone from Europe in the close season there, what's the point? Because they're not making playoffs. I think really for me, you've got to look up Toronto. Obviously, we've not mentioned that their Italian plan hasn't quite worked out. Benedeschi and Insigne have left, so they've got spaces to make some moves. Even though Toronto have got identical record to Atlanta, a much better goal difference, but identical record. If Toronto get some decent players in to replace them I could see them getting those 11 points back and making the playoffs. Whereas at Atlanta at the moment, they need a big change, and I don't know where that's coming. So I'm going to say Toronto, but also I'm going to say LAFC, because, like you said before, they're in and about. It's not a disaster of a season. They're in the playoffs and they've got games in hand, so they should rise up the table. But with Giroud going, replace him with another striker. They've already got a Bobasi up there. They've got Bouanga. Keep hold of Bouanga. And, they could really make moves in the second half of the season.
Toronto is an interesting one because I think Toronto almost illustrate how bad Atlanta have been, because Toronto lost those two players that you mentioned. Atlanta brought in two big names. Their records are identical, absolutely identical. They've played 19, they've won 4, they've lost 10, and they've drawn 5. And I think the idea that those two would be running in exactly the same spot right now is absolutely wild after the money that Atlanta spent. So, I think it's going to be interesting, and we'll see a real signal of intent. Who's up for this fight?
Yes, well, two people who aren't up for any more fight is me and you, because we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks very much for watching on YouTube. Thanks very much for listening on your podcast provider. If you are watching on YouTube, then please subscribe to the channel. You will know first as soon as a new episode drops. We do it as a premiere, so you can sit back, get some popcorn, and watch me and Elliot for half an hour. Also, like this video and click the notification bell to be told of when we are going to be dropping new episodes as well. And comment as well. I like when people comment, positive and negative. Tell us what you think of your team so far, and if your team needs to make moves heading into the summer. If you're listening on your podcast provider, you can do that. You can get in touch via social media. We're on X, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and all the others that they seem to just come up from nowhere at MLS UK Show. But if you want to leave us a rating and a review, that'll really help as well. But Elliot, if you're going to do that on your podcast provider, there's one rule and one rule only.
Yes. 5 stars only, formerly LA Galaxy style.
Yeah, maybe we should take one of them stars off them for their performance this season.
Yeah, just for being terrible. So yeah, LA Galaxy style, 5 stars only.
Yeah, one of the Beckham ones. The 4th one can go. Right, that's it for us. We'll be back next time. But until then, I've been Henry Hewitt.
And I've been Elliot Holman.
See ya.